Welcome back to Stoic Spirit. Have you ever noticed how people suddenly come back into your life after you've stepped away? It's not magic, it's mindset. When you create distance, you shift the dynamic, and Stoicism explains exactly why. Think about it. The texts that once went unanswered suddenly get replies. The people who seemed indifferent start checking in. Why does this happen? It's not because they changed overnight, it's because you did. When you pull back, you create space. And in that space, people are forced to confront your absence. Distance reveals value. It makes them question what they took for granted, and ironically, the very act of letting go often draws them back. But here's the key. It's not about making them return. The real transformation happens when you no longer need them to. Today, we're diving into 7 powerful reasons why they return after you've given them space. This isn't about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about understanding human nature, mastering your emotions, and reclaiming your personal power. By the end of this video, you'll realize that the real power isn't in making them come back. It's in becoming someone who doesn't need them to. So stick around till the end, because reason number 7 will completely shift how you view relationships and self-worth. If you find value in what we're sharing today, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to Stoic Spirit, and join the community by commenting below. Your growth starts here, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Number 1. The impact of your absence. When you step back, your absence speaks louder than words. It creates a vacuum, a space that was once filled by your presence, attention, and energy. And here's the thing, people often take for granted what's always available. It's human nature to overlook the familiar, but the moment it's gone, they start noticing. Think about how you don't fully appreciate the warmth of the sun until you've been in the cold for too long. Your absence works the same way. When you remove yourself, it forces others to reflect, not just on you, but on the gap you leave behind. It's in that silence, that emptiness, where realization begins. Suddenly, the conversations you initiated, the support you offered, the small gestures you made, all stand out more in your absence than they ever did in your presence. This isn't about playing mind games. It's about the natural human tendency to recognize value only when it's no longer readily available. Stoic insight, Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you step back, you're not just removing yourself physically, you're giving others space to confront their own thoughts about you. They start to realize the value you brought, not because you reminded them, but because they felt the contrast between having you and losing you. This realization isn't always immediate. It can take days, weeks, even months for someone to feel the full impact of your absence. But when it hits hard. Why? Because your absence forces reflection, and reflection is where emotional clarity happens. Practical reflection. The next time you feel overlooked or underappreciated, don't fight for attention. Pull back. Create space. Let your absence speak. Because sometimes, the loudest message is sent in silence. And here's the most powerful part. While they're busy realizing your worth, you're busy rediscovering your own. That's the true impact of your absence. It doesn't just change them, it transforms you. Number 2. The magnetic pull of self-sufficiency. Independence is attractive. There's an undeniable magnetism in someone who stands confidently on their own, unshaken by the need for external validation. When you're no longer emotionally dependent on others to feel whole, you radiate a quiet confidence that speaks for itself. Why is this so powerful? Because most people are conditioned to seek validation from others. When you don't, it disrupts the norm. It signals strength, stability, and self-awareness, qualities that naturally draw others in. People are curious about those who seem fulfilled without external approval. They wonder, what makes this person so grounded? And that curiosity creates an invisible pull. Example, think of the most charismatic people you know. It's not their neediness that attracts attention, it's their self-assured presence. They don't try to impress, they simply are impressive. Their energy isn't desperate, it's calm, confident, and authentic. Stoic insight. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life, and true freedom comes from emotional independence." from knowing that your worth isn't tied to someone else's recognition. Practical application. Instead of seeking validation, focus on your growth, hobbies, and passions. Develop skills that challenge you, pursue goals that excite you, and cultivate habits that build resilience. When your life is rich with purpose, you don't need anyone to fill a void because there isn't one. Mindset shift. Your energy shifts from needing to becoming. And that shift, it's magnetic. Because the most attractive thing isn't how much you want someone, it's how little you need them to feel complete. Reflection exercise. List 3 things you've always wanted to do for yourself but never prioritized. Choose one and start today, even if it's a small step. Notice how focusing on your growth changes not just how you feel, but how others respond to you. Key takeaway. Self-sufficiency isn't just about being alone, it's about being whole. And when you're whole, people can't help but be drawn to your light. Have you ever noticed how your energy shifts when you stop seeking validation? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your experience. Number 3, the power of silence. Silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. In a world obsessed with constant communication, silence holds extraordinary power. It's not just the absence of words, it's the presence of self-control, confidence, and mystery. When you stop chasing, your silence creates curiosity. They start wondering, why aren't they reaching out? Did they move on? Are they happier without me? That curiosity grows into interest and eventually reflection. Here's the paradox. The more noise you make trying to be heard, the easier it is to be ignored. But when you choose silence, it forces others to listen. Not to your words, but to the echo of your absence. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their own thoughts, insecurities, and emotions. And that's powerful. Stoic reflection. Epictetus taught that we control our reactions, not others' actions. Silence is a reaction that speaks volumes. It says, I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to prove my worth. My presence or lack thereof speaks for me. Why does silence work? It disrupts expectations. People expect reactions. When you don't give them one, it creates an emotional gap they feel compelled to fill. It shifts the power dynamic. The person who controls the silence often controls the situation. It fosters self-reflection. In your absence, they're left alone with their thoughts, and sometimes that's exactly what they need to appreciate you. Example: think of a time when someone stopped responding to you unexpectedly. You probably replayed conversations in your head, analyzing every detail. That's the power of silence. It lingers longer than words ever could. Practical application. Pause before reacting. When you feel triggered, resist the urge to respond immediately. Breathe. Reflect. Respond only if it serves your peace. Master the art of presence. You don't always need to speak to be heard. Your energy, confidence, and calmness can fill a room without a single word. Embrace strategic silence. In conflicts, instead of arguing to be right, stay silent and observe. Often, people reveal more when you give them space to talk. Reflection exercise. Identify situations where your instinct is to over-explain or defend yourself. Practice holding back. Let your silence be your boundary. Observe how others respond. You'll notice their behavior shifts when they realize they can't control your reactions. Key takeaway: silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the calm confidence of someone who knows their value, doesn't need constant validation. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Now that we've explored how silence can shift dynamics, let's dive into something even more powerful: unpredictability. Because sometimes, what keeps people thinking about you isn't just the silence, but the mystery of not knowing what you'll do next. Number 4, the unpredictability factor. Predictability breeds comfort, but unpredictability breeds intrigue. Human beings are creatures of habit. We find comfort in patterns, in knowing what to expect. But when those patterns are disrupted, something powerful happens. Curiosity is triggered. When you consistently behave in a certain way, always texting first, always being available, always saying yes, you become predictable. And predictability, while safe, often leads to being taken for granted. But when you change your behavior, even slightly, you create a ripple effect that captures attention. Suddenly, you're not following the script they expect. And that disruption makes people wonder, what changed? Example: If you were always the one initiating conversations, try stepping back. Don't send them that text. Don't reach out first. At first, they might not notice, but over time, that absence of predictability becomes impossible to ignore. It disrupts their expectations and triggers curiosity. Why haven't they reached out? Are they upset? Have they moved on? That mental loop keeps spinning because you broke the pattern. Why does unpredictability work? It keeps people guessing. When others can't predict your next move, they become more engaged, consciously or subconsciously trying to figure you out. It shifts emotional dynamics. By not being readily available, you create an emotional gap they feel compelled to fill. It fosters intrigue. Mystery is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to what they don't fully understand. Stoic insight. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of self-mastery. When you control your impulses to seek constant reassurance or validation, you become unpredictable in the best way. Not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer driven by external approval. Mindset shift. You don't need to explain yourself. Your actions can create questions you don't have to answer, and that's the beauty of unpredictability. It speaks without words. Practical application. Break routine patterns. If you always respond immediately, wait. If you're always the first to apologize, pause. Change one small habit to disrupt expectations. Be spontaneous with your time. Instead of being overly available, prioritize your passions and interests. Let others see that your world doesn't revolve around them. Hold back when expected. The next time someone expects an emotional reaction from you, choose calm detachment instead. Surprise them with your composure. Reflection. Exercise. Identify one area where you feel predictable in relationships. Make a small change this week to disrupt that pattern. Reflect on how it feels to shift the dynamic without seeking a specific outcome. Key takeaway. Unpredictability isn't about manipulation, it's about self-possession. When you're no longer predictable, you're no longer taken for granted. You become a mystery worth unraveling, and that mystery keeps you unforgettable. Unpredictability keeps them guessing, but nothing shifts the dynamic more than when they see the growth they never expected. Because while mystery piques curiosity, growth commands respect. Let's dive into how your personal evolution speaks louder than any words ever could. What's one moment in your life where being unpredictable worked in your favor? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every comment, and your insights inspire future content. Don't hold back. Share your thoughts. Number 5. The growth they didn't expect. Nothing is more attractive than unexpected growth. When you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, people notice. Not because you shouted it from the rooftops, but because your progress speaks louder than words ever could. People have a tendency to mentally freeze you in the version of yourself they last interacted with. They remember who you were, the patterns you followed, your habits, and your mindset. But when you outgrow that version of yourself, it creates a shockwave. They expect the old you, but instead, they're met with someone evolved, confident, composed, and thriving. Story. Think of someone from your past who surprised you with how much they've grown. Maybe it was an old classmate, a former friend, or even an ex. That moment when you see them living their best life, glowing with self-assurance, achieving things you never associated with them, it triggers a thought. Wow, I didn't expect that. That reflection often leads to a deeper realization. Did I underestimate them? Or even, did I take them for granted? Why is unexpected growth so powerful? It challenges assumptions. People think they know you. Growth shatters that illusion and forces them to reevaluate their perception. It creates emotional contrast. They compare who you were with who you've become, and that contrast highlights your progress in bold letters. It shifts the power dynamic. Instead of seeking validation, your life becomes a testament to your own self-worth. Stoic insight. Seneca once said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Growth isn't a destination, it's a continuous process. When you focus on self-improvement, not to impress others but to fulfill your potential, it radiates authenticity. Challenge. Set a goal today that has nothing to do with anyone else, just you. It could be learning a new skill, getting physically stronger, improving your mindset, or pursuing a passion you've neglected. Let your growth be the loudest statement you make. Practical application. Self-audit. Reflect on areas of your life where you feel stagnant. Set a micro goal. It doesn't have to be huge. Consistency beats intensity. Small daily actions create massive change over time. Document your growth. Not for social media, not for others, for you. Write down your wins, however small. They add up. Reflection exercise. Think of a version of yourself from a year ago. Identify 3 ways you've grown since then. Ask yourself, what would surprise the old me about who I am today? Key takeaway. Growth isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself what you're capable of. And the beautiful irony, when you grow for yourself, that's when people start noticing the most. Growth often surprises people, but what hits even harder is when they realize what they've lost along the way. Let's talk about why absence doesn't just create curiosity, it reveals value. Number 6. The realization of what they lost. Sometimes people need to lose you to appreciate you. It's a hard truth, but it's often the absence, not the presence, that reveals value. When you're gone, they're left to reflect on the support, energy, and presence you brought into their lives, the things they took for granted when you were always there. Think about it. The comfort of always knowing someone will answer your calls, the silent assurance that someone has your back, and the warmth of small, consistent gestures. These things blend into the background until they disappear. Suddenly, what was once ordinary becomes irreplaceable. Stoic lesson. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When you remove yourself from someone's life, they begin to imagine the what-ifs. What if I had appreciated them more? What if I hadn't taken them for granted? Their mind fills the silence with scenarios, regrets, and realizations that weren't clear when you were readily available. Why does this happen? Familiarity breeds complacency. People stop noticing what's always there. Absence creates clarity. Without distractions, they face the emotional gap you left behind. Reflection amplifies emotions. The mind replays memories, often with a newfound appreciation for what was lost. Imagine this. You were always there for someone, through every setback, every hard time. But they never truly noticed. Then one day, you stop showing up. Weeks pass, and they start to feel the emptiness where your presence used to be. That's when it hits them, not because you left, but because they finally had to live without you. That realization, it cuts deeper than words ever could. Real-life example. Have you ever misplaced something valuable? A watch, a piece of jewelry, or even your favorite hoodie? You didn't think much about it when it was always within reach, but the moment it's gone, its absence feels significant. Now apply that to people. Key takeaway. Don't wait for them to realize your worth. Your value doesn't increase with their acknowledgement, nor does it diminish with their absence. But when they do realize it, it will be undeniable. The irony? By the time they come back, you'll have grown so much that their recognition might no longer matter. Practical application. Shift the focus. When someone pulls away, redirect your energy inward. Focus on growth, not on being noticed. Live authentically. Don't adjust your value based on external validation. You're not a commodity to be appraised. You're a person with inherent worth. Set boundaries. If they return, ask yourself, do they miss me, or do they miss the version of me that was always available? Reflection exercise. Think of a time when someone didn't appreciate your presence until you were gone. Reflect on how that made you feel and what you learned from it. Now flip the perspective. Are there people or things you've taken for granted? What can you do differently moving forward? Final thought. You are not defined by who stays or who leaves. You are defined by the resilience you build, the growth you pursue, and the peace you cultivate within yourself. Have you ever been in a situation where someone only realized your value after you were gone? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every comment, and your insights inspire future content. Don't hold back. Share your thoughts. Number 7. The fear of being replaced. Here's the harsh truth. When you move on, it often triggers fear in others. Not because they genuinely miss you, but because they fear being replaced. The thought of you thriving without them challenges their ego, forcing them to confront an uncomfortable reality. They are no longer central to your life. Why does this happen? Because for many people, relationships are tied to a sense of control, validation, or security. When you detach and start living your life fully, you disrupt that dynamic. Suddenly, you're not the person who's always there, always available, or always seeking their attention. You become the person they can't predict, and that unpredictability sparks fear. Stoic perspective. True detachment is freedom. Epictetus taught that our peace comes from focusing on what we can control, and that means our reactions, not other people's choices. When you let go, you break emotional chains. You reclaim your time, your energy, and your mental space. Ironically, that very freedom often makes others want to reconnect. Why? Because people are drawn to what they can no longer control. Your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. Why is the fear of being replaced so powerful? It exposes insecurities. The idea of being replaced forces people to confront their own self-worth. It shifts the power dynamic. When you stop needing them, the emotional leverage shifts back to you. It disrupts the comfort zone. People grow accustomed to your presence. Removing it shakes their sense of stability. Real-life example. Think of someone who used to rely on your attention. The moment you pulled back, they might have suddenly become more attentive, more interested, even more affectionate. Not necessarily because they valued you deeply, but because your absence threatened their comfort. Picture this. They scroll through social media and see you laughing, thriving, and living your best life. Not a trace of them in sight. That's the moment fear creeps in. Not fear of losing you, but fear of being forgotten. Because nothing haunts the ego more than the realization that someone has moved on without looking back. Mindset shift. You don't win when they come back. You win when you no longer care if they do. That's true emotional independence, when your peace isn't tied to someone else's actions. Your value doesn't fluctuate based on who stays or who leaves. Practical application. Focus on fulfillment. Build a life so rich with purpose, growth, and joy that no one's absence creates a void. Detach with compassion. Letting go doesn't mean you're cold, it means you respect your emotional boundaries. Reclaim your power. Instead of wondering, will they come back, ask, do I even want them to? Reflection exercise. Identify one relationship where you felt dependent on someone's validation. Reflect on how detachment could create more freedom and peace for you. Write down 3 ways you can prioritize your own growth over seeking approval from others. Key takeaway: your value isn't defined by who fears losing you. It's defined by how much you refuse to lose yourself in the process. The real victory isn't having someone come back. It's realizing you never needed them to feel whole. So, why do they come back after you've given them distance? It's simple. Distance reveals clarity. When you step away, it forces people to confront the space you once filled, to reflect on the value you brought, and to realize the void left behind. But the real question isn't why they come back. It's whether you still need them when they do. Here's the truth. Growth happens in the space between attachment and freedom. It's not about waiting for someone to return. It's about evolving so much that whether they come back or not becomes irrelevant. Your peace, your progress, and your purpose are not dependent on someone else's presence. Stoic reflection. You don't control who stays or who leaves, but you control how you respond. And when you respond with self-respect, emotional maturity, and inner strength, you've already won. Because true victory isn't in rekindling old connections, it's in realizing that you've outgrown the need for them. If you found value in this video, hit the like button, subscribe to Stoic Spirit, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Which reason resonated with you the most? I'd love to hear your reflections. So the next time someone comes back into your life, don't just ask, why did they return? Ask yourself, do they deserve to return to the person I've become? Thank you for watching and being part of this journey with me. Your growth matters, your story matters, and always remember, you are the prize.